thank you for coming. Since I just had surgery and I'm under the influence, I am going to be speaking softly, but I do have a big stick. And in an effort to learn something, I'm going to be turning the chair over to the Mayor Pro Tem, Mrs. Valerie Guzman, and I'm going to sit back and be as quiet as I can. And for those of you who know me, it's usually not too quiet. But having said that, Mrs. Guzman, you have the chair.
Okay, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the City of Hardeeville City Council Workshop, 205 Main Street, Hardeeville, South Carolina, 29927, Tuesday, 4 February 2025 at 3 p.m. This is an informative workshop only. No voting will take place today. The rules of order are relaxed with no order of speaking. The only thing I ask is to let the current speaker finish speaking before asking your question. So let's get right to it. Over to you, Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So as indicated, today is a workshop session. So it's an opportunity for us to get information out to the public and then hear from you about what are your questions, what are your concerns, and have an opportunity to try and address those by and large, either at today's meeting or at a subsequent meeting when these items come formally before council for consideration. So again, there's going to be no action, no votes taken today, but the purpose of today is to exchange information, to answer questions, and then to position this item for action at a subsequent meeting once all that information has been discussed by everybody. So today we're going to start with having staff come up and kind of introduce this matter, talk about it, where it's come from procedurally, tee it up in terms of the details that we're going to be talking about, and then we'll turn it over to the applicants to kind of have them walk through what they are proposing. But I think it's important to emphasize that what is being reviewed today.
So sorry. She's looking for the corner and we can't find it.
Okay. Well, while we work to find another pointer.
I'll just have to figure out something.
Advances the slides. Yeah. There we go. Now we got something coming. All right.
Right now, and we'll try to find your pointer.
So one of the things to keep in mind is that this process takes multiple steps. It's similar to building a cake. You know, first you bring the ingredients together, then you put the cake in the oven, and then you decorate the cake. So where we're at today in looking at this is looking at the Planned Development District, which at a very high level discusses all of the elements that will be going within the community itself. Not necessarily where they're going to be positioned and what the layout's going to be, but just talking at a high level about the types of uses that are going to go in that Planned Development District. And then the second portion is the initial master plan, which for our purposes today really focuses on infrastructure. So there's a lot of questions that'll come up later on about amenities and things like that, but really want to let you know that comes as part of a future phase when they really start doing master plans of the actual individual developments within the larger parcel. So just setting the tone and context for what we are going to be discussing today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Katie.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Katie.
Turn that on for you. Okay, so yes, this is a workshop for two applications, overall PDD, as Josh said, and then the first master plan. So it is important to note that all the areas outlined in red here are the property, the complete property. So you have 278 John Smith Road, 46. You have adjacent developments. The car track down here, Margaritaville here, Millstone Landing here, and then South Point across the way. This was originally approved in 2006. It did include a variety of uses. So I'm going to go, this is the proposed master plan. So the difference here is that they have rearranged some of the uses and cut out industrial. All right, so approximately 2,629 acres, residential, mixed use, commercial, open space, and park facilities. A maximum of 6,700 units and up to 1,000 multifamily units. Now you have the first proposed initial master plan. 841 acres with residential amenities open space, total of 1,344 units. Here's the open space plan. You have a multi-use trail that goes all along the spine road, as well as sidewalks and trails throughout the plan. At this time, I'm going to introduce Drew, if you want to come up. And I'll get your,
Let's put the,
PDF.
let's put the, I should put PDF.
Pull the PDFs up.
One second.
Oh, shoot.
As they're working on that, I just want to one more time reiterate that it's two different applications that we're talking about here, really three with the development agreement, but the overall PDD and then this one master plan. So, but we'll go through the difference, and I'm sure Drew's got lots of information on that. This works now. The clicker in, and they're going to get the other exhibit up.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Brianna. My name is Drew Lonker. I work for Thomas & Hutton. We are one of the engineers on the Morgan Track project. I also have with me Lamar Mercer with Thomas & Hutton and Jennifer Beal with Beal Engineering. Jennifer has done a lot of the traffic studies associated with the project, working with the city, working with SCDOT, all that kind of stuff as well. I just kind of wanted to go through, give a little background of, kind of where Morgan Tract is today, what the proposed changes in the PDD are, kind of outline the initial master plan for it, and just kind of go through really some of our concerns and how we plan to address those concerns. So as Katie said, the current Morgan Tract development agreement and PDD were originally adopted in 2006. And in that document, there are a lot of standards that were in place at the time that development was done, that Plan Development District and DA were done. So older stormwater standards, older buffer standards, traffic standards, everything about it. There's been a lot of changes in the city. There's been adjacent development since then. So this PDD really tries to bring that agreement up to current standards. So a couple just highlighted items are, one, traffic. Obviously, the city has done a great job with doing an overall traffic study for the entire area, taking into account not only Morgan Tract, but also other developments in the vicinity of the project, existing development. And then we have also done our own traffic study in coordination with that city study with the adjacent developers as well. Just a couple highlights of the master plan from that are the Spine Road, which is a north-south connector road that goes from 46 all the way up through Morgan Tract to US 278. That would be a public roadway. It would be a boulevard type section, so landscape median, 2 lanes going each direction. So this really would be a connector from whereas right now really the only connection between 46 and 278 is John Smith Road. Yeah. So this is and this Spine Road is included not only in the PDD master plan, but as well as the block, we're calling it the Block A IMP, the initial master plan. So that's a part of this application as well. Alongside that Spine Road is a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway that's being proposed. So throughout the community, we do have in the PDD that sidewalks be on the side of the streets. We've got other trails through wooded areas, open spaces, things like that, just to kind of give some pedestrian access and different modes of transportation along that Spine Road. So the developer here also has stepped up to fund the John Smith Road improvements. So that that is actually a memorandum of understanding that was passed by council at the previous council meeting. So that's another improvement that is being proposed, and that kind of, the city's working on getting that process rolling. So that's definitely a good regional improvement that's coming from this project as well. We have been in coordination with SCDOT. We've got approval on our access management plan for access locations from them. They have approved the traffic study, and the study's been reviewed by the city's engineer, and obviously approved by SCDOT as well. So from a traffic perspective, one other just important item to note is the frontage road along sort of this commercial area to the north off of 278. So similar to the Spine Road, that's also a public roadway, or is proposed to be a public roadway. To really get, again, just, from any adjacent developments, it kind of keeps that traffic internal to the site, rather than spitting it out on US 278 as well. So we are trying to pull as much as we can off of there and provide interconnection within the Morgan Tract with the roadways, because we know traffic's a concern. That's a concern of ours too. So that's kind of the reason for really this roadway network that you see here. Stormwater, as I said, the current PDD references stormwater standards from 2006. The city actually passed a new ordinance last year, 2014, with updated stormwater standards. So this revised document, revised PDD, incorporates those new stormwater standards. So it brings it up to current, both stormwater quality and quantity. So those are included in the document. And just to kind of highlight, I know, we've seen some, drainage issues around Pine Arbor, and we've done, or the owner has done, a comprehensive upstream and downstream analysis to really study the entire area for stormwater. And we have taken into account, the city is looking at this area. When future improvements are done, we've sized infrastructure to be able to accommodate those future improvements. So just from an engineering perspective, if we're, say, required to right now have a 50-year level of service for our culverts under roadways, we are proposing 100-year. So it does increase the culvert size a little bit, but it just makes sure that, we're doing a good job in maintaining stormwater out there. The last, I guess, related item I did just want to bring up is buffers. So the current buffer in the PDD, on the exterior of the PDD, is 10 feet. We are proposing to increase that to 50 feet at a minimum, specifically along kind of the eastern property boundary here. If I could go to, is there a way to switch to the next? Yeah, just the IMP. Yeah, this one will be fine. So right now, everything you see kind of in green here, these are all wetlands. And those are all proposed to stay with the project. So, and those really provide a really large natural buffer for the property. So most of our development within this Block A IMP, it's really pushed to the center. The average buffer along here, whereas the minimum in the PDD is 50 feet, the average is actually closer to 400 when you take into account all of those existing wetlands. So, obviously we don't want to, have any kind of disturbance to adjacent properties, anything like that. So we are trying to bring our land plan farthest away from the property line as we can. And then I kind of spoke before about just, pedestrian access. The orange line on here is kind of that 10-foot super trail that we're proposing, all the way down from 46 all the way up to US 278. Everything you see in blue is a sidewalk. And then there are also trails throughout that would be sort of more of a natural, unpaved type trail, just throughout open spaces. So Right now, we are proposing to increase our open space requirement to 40%. The plan you see here before you, actually, it exceeds that. I think this is 42%, but don't quote me on that. I can't read it down there, but it does exceed that 40% requirement. Obviously, the goal is to make it as nice of a community as it can be. So that's kind of the reasoning for upping that open space requirement. So active open spaces, passive open spaces, all that kind of stuff. One important item that, again, that we are also concerned about is construction access. So right now, the only access to the site from US 278 is through Stryker Road, which is along the property line between Latitude Margaritaville to the east and Morgan Tract. There is also an access down out here on 46, and there are dirt roads throughout the property that currently exist today. In order to try to stay off Stryker Road as much as we can, we are proposing to essentially initially access Stryker Road through a temporary driveway that we do have a permit from SCDOT for a temporary driveway. It ultimately would be removed, which would connect to Stryker and then have construction traffic come south through the property and then access it off of Stryker Road. Obviously, our end goal with construction access is to get it off of Stryker Road as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, right now, the site is about 7 feet lower than US 278. So in order to actually construct that access to get the trucks off of Stryker Road, we are going to have to use that for at least initially. Once these other accesses are built and the spine road is fully constructed, that's when we can pull them off completely. And I've got some things we could go through as we kind of, questions come up, just kind of showing that progression, timelines for that kind of stuff, if you guys have questions on that. I think those are most of the highlights that I really wanted to go through. Like I said, this project really is, in my opinion, at least from a transportation perspective, really going to provide a good benefit, especially with that spine road, providing that additional connection, John Smith Road improvements. So I guess with that, I'll open it up to any other questions or anything that you guys have.
I'm going to start with questions from the council, and I'll start with Mr. Museman to my right.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I got quite a lengthy list of questions and concerns. Some are mine, some were brought to me by residents of Latitude and residents of Hardyville. First off is the access to 278 safety. Your main spine road, is that going to access right across from Brickyard Road?
The main spine road will not. There's actually another median cut to the west of Brickyard Road.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the main spine road will be. There is an access point over here, and for just the first phase, because we have to get some wetland permitting through to finalize the spine road. Once that wetland permit is finalized, that's when that will come in. The initial access road will be from the east, which is at that Brickyard intersection.
Will the spine road access to 278 be signalized?
Yes.
That's a lengthy process. I would like to see that started as soon as possible,
Yeah, and
for safety reasons especially.
Yes, and we have applied for the wetland permit to build that spine road.
Okay.
And right now, it's looking like 2026 is when it's scheduled for. Obviously, that is dependent upon the review agencies.
Okay. The reason that is going to be so important is you move forward and you're building family homes in there, that will be the access to the school down on Red Dam Road. There's going to be families using that entrance and school buses. So safety has got to be a priority for everybody, residents, children, everybody else there. Because 278 basically, according to DOT, is close to failure as it sits right now. 278 is going to be a priority with the sales tax improvements. So be aware, those are gonna come on. Your access for Stryker Road, that's currently there, current access to it that is being used by Minto is, actually on the Morgan property. And I have been told by Minto folks that they're working with them to secure some type of agreement to continue using that road.
Repeat that, start that again, about, I missed it, the very first of that.
The Stryker Road, the current access is on the Morgan property. Or not the Morgan, but the Sutton property.
Yep, that's correct.
Minto is working with Sutton to try to secure continued access to that, is what I've been told by the Minto folks. I know where your road comes out onto 278 right there. Is that going to be a right in and right out only? Because it's not directly in front of a crossover.
Right, yeah, so yes, that's correct. It would be a right in and right out only.
And your logging trucks and your heavy construction will be using that as you clear the land in these first phases?
Initially, yes, and so I can kind of go through, this is our at least construction access kind of plan that we have here. And as I said, so right now, this is our phase one entrance road. So this is Brickyard Road right here.
Yes.
And we're proposing, at least initially, to cut through here. And then once our wetland impact permit is approved, this would be the main spine road access, sort of right there.
Okay.
So right now, there's a dirt road in Morgan Tract that you can kind of see it in this aerial that runs through here, but it does stop before it gets to 278. And there's about a 7-foot grade change between 278 and this down here. So in order for trucks to even utilize this, they really have to build up this road. And so in order to do that, that's why we're proposing just to use Stryker initially with that right in, right out, as well as all the way down at the bottom, there's another access along 46 for
yes.
that too.
Yeah, the right in, right out is going to be a concern. It's a heavily trafficked area. If you've traveled that area in the morning between 8 and 9 o'clock,
Yeah, and totally
you can't
agree.
travel it. You just crawl through it. That's the best way to put it. So that, that can be a safety concern. So initially, you will be using Stryker Road, correct?
Yes, and initially they will be using Stryker Road. If I can go to, so this would be after this initial access is built. So once this is built, and this would be, I think we have on here dates. I think we put what we're estimating about 2027 for that construction. Once this is actually built, that will be the primary access.
And
at
you'll
the median
abandon,
cut.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Stryker will be used for a number of years by the car track too, so we know where we're at with that. As you initially use Stryker Road, it being a shared access with Minto, concern of the residents, my concern and a lot of them is maintaining that road for dust control and smoothing it out. Nobody wants to hear the banging of trucks on a washboard road. Those same concerns have been expressed to Minto also, so we're not asking you all anything I wouldn't ask of them for that. So maintaining that road is going to be a priority. Your construction traffic prior to 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m., that's going to be correct? Your construction traffic, your logging and everything else is a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. access.
Yes, I think that's all that's allowed by the city, if
Okay,
I'm not mistaken.
okay, because it will be monitored, I'm sure, by the residents, and they will let us know.
Yeah, I will say we are going to have to just work with DOT because we are, to build this access will require just some, traffic control to make sure we're doing everything safely for US 278. And at this time, we're just not that far along to know at least hours of when that work would happen or anything like that. So I do want to make that clear that
Okay, absolutely. Completion of the Spine Road to 46. Other developments that we've worked with, specifically the car track, they are to build, they agreed for construction of a limited number of homes before the access road is completed to 46. And they are not allowed to even be issued a permit if they miss that date. As we come further ahead, I will be requesting the same of this development, and I will request it of every development as it comes along, to have a drop-dead date on completion or a limit of number of residences prior to it. I'm putting that out there just so,
Yeah, and this would be no different. Our traffic study, I believe it's approximately, I don't know the exact number of development units, but it does dictate a specific number of units that can be built and moved into until additional road improvements are needed. So, yeah.
I'm not talking build, I'm talking permits issued too.
Right, yes.
You know, this is one of those things where the permit won't be issued until, so just so that's out there, that's my speaking on that. I could ask, but your timeline, I'm not gonna go there, because you don't really know how that's gonna come along, market's gonna dictate that.
Right.
But your connection with your internal roads to the car tract, there is a provision within the car tract for a connecting road into Morgan for emergency access for police, fire, and those. Do you have internal roads built in into the development?
Yes.
To,
Specifically,
connect.
that road you're talking about it's actually this one here.
okay,
So that one is included in this, and it's specifically outlined in the PDD as well.
all right,
So yes, that's included.
all right. You mentioned your property setback, 50 feet. I appreciate all of that. As you build, you're further down into your development. 50 feet is not, it's a good area. Minto on their side, they have 50 feet, and they have a berm, and then you have a 20-foot shared roadway of Stryker Road, and then you're gonna have 50 feet on your side. I would like to see on yours where these two developments actually meet Stryker Road together, fencing, something for privacy. You have a family development there, and Minto has a 55 plus, and just want to make it as safe and as enjoyable for all residents on both sides. I would hate to see children on Stryker Road with construction being done in the car tract. It's a dangerous situation, so I'm asking you to please, please consider fencing along where those two, I would call them pods, intersect. You can see along in your mapping right there where some of them. I see phase 4 of Latitude, and if you scroll down, you'll connect with phase 6s and 8. So,
Yeah, and I know as a part of the PDD as well, new landscape standards were adopted by the city in 2024. So those buffer requirements are brought forward to this PDD. So that includes like the density of plantings, everything like that. I don't know what necessarily the Latitude
I'm
one.
not,
you know, in
I'm not
terms of
gonna
their-
ask you that. I just want to say, let's consider everybody being good neighbors.
Yes.
That's the idea for that. Within your development that you're, on your initial master plan, you do have pocket parks and things like that built in along the road, along your spine road?
Yes, let me try to back up here. So everything you see here, so we've essentially this orange line here. So this is that 10-foot trail that I was kind of talking about. So that goes all the way north-south. Everything in kind of a light green here would be open space, pocket park, that kind of thing. Purple are amenity areas. So there are a few of those kind of scattered throughout. So we've got a large amenity down here. Another one over here.
Okay.
Another one here. Sorry, this is a little tricky to navigate
As
with.
these pods are brought to the council, I will bring that question up again.
Yeah, and
For
then
development.
the blue line or sidewalk. So we are proposing to put sidewalk throughout the community too, just for that pedestrian interconnectivity as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. We've got the completion of the spine road we've talked about. Securing your construction road. That's gonna be, in the past, when the gates or it's not secured, on the weekends, there's been everything you could think of accessing Stryker Road. ATVs, motorcycles, Jeeps, you name it. That's going to be that's going to be a concern. You must secure your road because there again, that road also gives access to the folks that live in Phase 4, will live in Phase 6 and Phase 8. I've requested the same thing of Minto. You know, make it safe so those residents don't have to worry. Let's see. As I mentioned, Latitude is a development of 55 plus. Yours is going to be family. Let's all work to make this good neighbors and safe for everybody. As the council comes, you've answered the questions that I've put forth today, and I'll probably have more from the residents as we come through. But they live there. They're already there. Let's not disturb them. All right.
Yeah, and our goal too with this is, I mean, obviously we want, the HIC Morgan wants the
Sure.
best community we can have.
Oh, absolutely.
For not only their residents but everyone else.
Absolutely. The 278 access will be a concern, simply because of the amount of traffic on that, we all know. The logging is going to be immense for a while from both developments. That's understandable. I just hope that we don't create problems with
Yeah,
all of that.
and just, I know this is known, the developer of this property has agreed again to, because, I mean, traffic is a concern. I mean, we're not trying to argue that or anything. And, the John Smith Road intersection is a concern. So they have agreed to fully, they've stepped up to fund that entire intersection, understanding that, improvements need to be done. So they're willing to step up and get it done, essentially.
If roads could fall out of the sky and put a spine road in tomorrow, I'd be as happy as could be. Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Thank you.
I have a few. Steve actually addressed one or two important ones that I had. One being the Spine Road to help traffic. And he reiterated what I was gonna reiterate about permits being issued until you assure us about the construction of that Spine Road, because, that's gonna be a serious, sorry. I thought I had it on. Cindy cut it off probably on me. She'll do that if you don't watch her.
Go ahead.
But anyway, that was one of my important points. We have got to work on that Spine Road. To me, that is one of the most critical elements of this to alleviate some of the traffic problems. And I was impressed when you said that you had done your own traffic study. So many times, we have dealt with the developments coming in, and they'll say, we did developments study for us, but then you got somebody here, and nobody coordinated. All three of you, or whatever, how many, that are coming in, all of you gonna be using the road, so it should be a coordinated study. So I was impressed that you said, that you knew about the existing study, and that you had also done your own study. So that's, to me, that shows good stewardship. Also, you mentioned about the stormwater study and the 100-year floodplain, whatever. And I guess that Hardeeville had us, I guess, probably 3 or 4 months ago when we had the flood and stuff, that we've had lots of, I guess, Brown and some of the others, Public Works, whatever, have trying to work on Pine Arbor Road with the flood and some of the, I think, pump stations, and I know the culverts, the diameter wasn't big enough. And I noticed that you, in your talk a while ago, actually mentioned that you were going to increase the size of some of your culverts because you were aware of the Hardeeville problem with Pine Arbor Road, and that, to me, that was also very impressive. What were you going to show me?
Yeah, I was gonna say, a lot of that area ultimately drains through this wetland system through Morgan Tract here
Right.
onto Car Tract.
Right.
And so you can see we are crossing that with our Spine Road. So our drainage study that we did, it incorporates all of this upstream area, and it actually also goes downstream through Car Tract, through Latitude as well. So it takes into account those developments. And it does account for the fact that, as drainage improvements occur, these culverts have been sized to be able to handle the increased flow.
And see, that, to me, that's a big help, because, that shows that you're gonna work with the city people, because we'll already have an issue. We don't need something on top of that. So, I thought that was very impressive with that. Let's see. Construction traffic, Steve, pretty well dealt with that, and he actually is more familiar with that than I am. But anyway, you did address those concerns for me. And, also Stryker Road, I had a couple of questions on that, and Steve pretty well handled that too. So I think that's it for me, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think John and Steve have covered the major points I would raise, so not to reiterate or be redundant. But those are very, very important, and the safety issue is something that you're hearing loud and clear.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple questions, and a lot of them are going to deal mainly with stormwater issues. What flood zone is your project in?
It's a portion of it's in Zone AE.
Okay,
So that's within the 100-year floodplain. And that essentially, I'm oversimplifying it, but that does follow essentially our wetland boundary for the most part, that line. The remainder in it is either in Zone X shaded, which is within the 500-year floodplain, or Zone X unshaded, which is outside the 500.
okay. Because if you're in Zone AE, it's considered a special flood hazard area, so which means that your project is going to have a permit from the County National Floodplain Insurance Program manager before any impacts can occur to the aquatic resources and the associated floodplains on site. You're aware of that?
Yeah, we'll have to apply for our permits, which is, so through the city of Hardeeville, I guess you all participate in that program, correct? Yeah, so it would be reviewed through that as well.
And that has to be done before any kind of fill dirt goes in or anything like that?
Correct, yes.
Okay, great. So as a condition in your permit pertaining to fill material and floodwaters, it requires that the conveyance system be designed by a professional engineer. Design criteria to pass pre-development flow rates at 10, 50, and 100-year events. So due to the potential for impact to the other properties, the Army Corps of Engineers will consider any non-compliance to be a serious violation and may be grounds for suspension, modification, or revocation of that permit. You're aware of that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep, and that's, as I said, we're sizing infrastructure for that,
okay.
those storm events, including that 100-year storm event.
So my thing is to either Brenna or Katie, who ensures that this is followed?
Combination of people on the staff review committee. So our engineers, Sandy's office, planning, everybody.
Make sure that it's actually, that it's being complied with and followed actually? Okay.
Throughout the process.
To put a little bit more definition to that, Katie, we've got multiple review steps. First, we will do a plan review set. So before anything's built, we'll review the drainage plans and calculations that have been submitted, review those for appropriateness. So before anything goes forward, that's the first step of review. Then there's field inspections where there's review done to make sure that the work that's being done in the field matches the plans that have been approved. And then ultimately, and as an ongoing issue, there can be inspections that come up to address concerns that are raised with regards to potential issues. So it's from birth through the entire life cycle of the project.
Okay, thanks. So when South Point came before us last month, there was issues with the flood, stormwater issues, because I think the storms that we had recently, Pine Arbor was completely underwater. And with each consecutive development, it increases the impervious surfaces, and, that water has no place to go. So they voluntarily agreed to increase their stormwater retention. So would you be amenable to do that so that you both are on the same page? And we can prevent maybe a flood happening down the line somewhere? Because it gets very expensive to fix something after the fact, because once you guys do your construction and you leave, and then we have all these issues, then it falls upon the city to fix it, and it's an expense that we don't need. So if you guys go, instead of the 50-year, you address it at 100-year, and then, extrapolate those numbers if you don't have it, and then just increase it, so we err on the side of caution, because I firmly believe in, yeah, you can fix it, but then it costs more. But if you have preventative measures, that's, I think, a little cheaper than trying to fix something
Right, yeah.
after the fact.
Yeah, and so as I said, like we have done that drainage analysis that, again, so we've taken into account all upstream areas and downstream for that 100-year storm event to make sure that we're meeting those requirements.
Okay. So with regard to endangered species, now, there was quite a few found in the South Point project across the street from you, just across the road from John Smith. So have you guys done any kind of studies to ascertain if there are any endangered species on your property? Any kind of environmental impact / assessment being done to identify?
We have, as a part of our wetland permitting, we had to do that.
And did you find anything on there? Because I know the bats, there was some kind of bats out there that
Yeah.
were found to be on that property.
I would have to defer to, I guess, Lamar and Tom on that.
So, good afternoon.
Hi,
How's everybody doing?
good.
Good. Lamar Mercer, Thomas and Hutton. So, yes, there has been quite an extensive amount of threatened and endangered species studies performed for the property. Enough so that we thought about starting a GoFundMe page.
All right.
That was a joke. They're very,
I know,
but
I
they're very
know.
important, right? So we understand that. So the appropriate consultants have been engaged. I do want to point out the rules are changing a lot as we go through this. And it gets confusing to people because there's a federally listed species and there's a state species of concern, right? And I don't want anybody to be mad at me if I misstate that because I'm not a professional in that portion of it. So I'm still trying to understand it ourselves. But yes, and we're still waiting for some final results to come back for some of the federally listed species. So whatever requirements come along, we'll be bound by that. But again, to be clear, because there's so many different types of bats out there, there still may be some state listed that don't really have regulations applied to those yet.
Yeah.
You're
So,
not a bad expert.
No, I'm not a bad expert.
so
But I know one who is, if you want his number.
I was reading the SCDNR report from the folks across the road, and there was quite a few bats in there, and they had recommended that we do the acoustic study in the summer months. So
That occurred.
that
And,
occurred.
well, and I don't want to know, I'm not sure, are you referring to South Point also?
Yes, because I mean, y'all are just across the street. I mean,
Well, you got
bats
that
are
and you have
not
car, not to tangle them all up, but there are multiple studies
Right.
that are occurring by different consultants also.
Right.
Yes, we're taking on the recommendations of the professional that we have engaged with and we're recommended to our group to engage and study those during the summertime or during the appropriate times because there's pupping months and there's gestation months. I'm gonna get that part.
Yes,
also.
yes,
So yes,
yes,
we're completely trying to follow all
You're a
those.
bad expert.
No. I'm gonna back away right now.
Okay, and my final question I have is, has a cultural survey been done on this Morgan tract?
Yes, ma'am. A cultural resource survey was completed. Oh, not sure what happened to the screen. It was completed
You
actually.
broke it.
Actually, hey, actually, Josh put it best earlier. Like this is like baking a cake, and this has a history of now 15 plus years. I'm probably gonna get that date or a little bit wrong also, but yes, the wetland permitting is associated with this property. The jurisdictional determination created or performed back in 2004, 5-ish. A wetland permit was issued for the bottom half of the property. Well, in conjunction with doing that, a cultural resource survey was completed on the entire property. So in order to begin work, which we were very near that stage, we had to record restrictive covenants to permanently memorialize the cultural resources and there's one small grouping and I know we've been through these conversations before about divulging that information, but there's a grouping of them on the property that have been permanently preserved through restrictive covenants and will not be touched. Now,
Okay.
walking around them.
Okay, so how do you propose to protect that area? Like, are you going to have a 50-foot buffer, a 100-foot buffer around this
Used to be
area?
right. It's 35 or 50, whatever. SHPO makes the recommendation. State Historic Preservation Office makes the recommendation or signs off on the buffer based on the archaeologist recommendations in coordination with SHPO. So whatever it is that they deem necessary, and then during construction, there's conditions applied to the permit and the restrictive covenants. You have to put like orange fencing around it,
Right.
so everybody knows it's there. Protect it. Do not touch it.
Okay, all right. I am done for today.
Okay, great questions. Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honoress. I've been waiting all afternoon to say that.
Wait till George hears that.
Well, George calls it that, right?
It's in my-
Yeah.
Yeah, he bends the
Okay.
knee.
First of all, for full disclosure, Josh and I did meet with the engineering firm about a week ago, and I believe Josh was going to update council at the monthly reviews. So I have questions from today and concerns what Steve brought up, and also notes I made today. So I'm going to be going through three lists here, so please bear with me. First of all, just out of curiosity, was this a 15, 20, 25-year-old PDD? And I guess it's for Prina, and was it ever told?
PDDs are just, they're in place for the term. It's the zoning, sir. So there's no tolling act or anything that applies to that.
And there was no date on the limit?
No, sir, not on the
Wasn't-
PDD.
It
The-
wasn't a contractual amount of time? So this goes for, this 2006 PDD is in place perpetually?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The development agreement would have a term, but the PDD does not.
Okay. The first thing, I want to go over some of the notes I made from the meeting I referenced from last week. You mentioned that there's a 400-foot average,
Yes.
okay? What I'm concerned about is not the averages, because there's a big wetland area on some parts, and it's about 4 feet behind somebody's house, okay? We've made mistakes down in Levy, and also we're going through a situation right now with apartments going behind Sun City. While everything looks good on paper, when you actually start, it looks a lot different. So I'm just going to throw that out there because I'm going to come back to that. The other thing, and Steve mentioned this, and it's so important for us up here, is that we need to maintain consistency. And where you have your development literally in the backyard of Margaritaville, in previous conversations, and the one by Sun City, we required a 10-foot fence. And that serves a couple of purposes. It provides a little bit of privacy between the two developments and a little bit of security. Now, people can climb a fence, they can go around it, and I understand that. But in the name of consistency, what I brought up last week, I think this council should demand, not ask you, but demand a fence where it's right up against the Margaritaville development. We did in Sun City. We had a long conversation at the farmhouse apartments, and I think that should be a non-negotiable requirement. I'm not saying the whole length, but where it abuts to these homes, it's not enough. Also, 50 feet, what we also found, when you clear cut up to 50 feet, in a lot of areas, you have brush. I mean, it's not a thick forest of 50 feet. and that's part of the problem. So I think we need some better protective, whether it's a berm, raised landscaping, whatever it is. When you cut to that 50 feet, you're going to be able to see somebody taking a shower. And we can't have that. And that's the other reason for the fence. And Josh, I think from a staff standpoint, this should be a non-negotiable point. Not the whole length of the road or the development, but where it butts up against these people's homes.
Drew, if you could, have them shifted over so that we can see primarily pods 4, 6, and 8.
Yeah.
Because I think those are the three that are probably most relevant to this discussion. There we go.
Yes, so these here.
So I don't know what the length of that is. Now, when you go to the, up to the upper part, you got all that wetlands, and there you maintain a heavily wooded area. But when you clear cut up to that, and there's Minto homes over right next to it,
Can you show the one where you actually see the homes, where the homes are in Minto?
This right in here, right
Yeah,
in,
that-
right in here is. going
right
to be-
there, that's I've seen from the other maps.
This
Yeah.
is 6 and 8 will be the ones that will have direct contact to Stryker Road.
Now, going above and below there,
4 is above.
right, so above and below there, those other homes, there's a lot of wetlands there, and that's where you get the 400-foot average. But where they come right up to the property line, we need more, and I don't want to use protective because these are families, but it's also for the protection of if they have kids there. You don't want them getting in trouble, okay? The kids are kids. But if you have some blockage, you're going to, maintain some separation of the two things. So I don't know how many feet that is, and as you get further down, but if we make it a standard, as you get to the other sections, as you build down was it 1,300 units along here, it's a standard wherever it comes up. We made the mistake in Levy. We have Mr. Harper have a warehouse in his backyard, and we don't want that, okay? And we talked about this, Lamar, okay?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Along those lines, should council be of a consensus that that is something that they want to see, I would recommend that you incorporate that in any form of a motion if and when we get to that point this evening. Not this evening, I'm
Council,
sorry, on
does
on Thursday.
anybody disagree with that requirement?
No, sir.
Let's get it off the table. So you have a unified council here, without taking a vote, that this is something we want required wherever it's,
I do want to say we're taking it under consideration, and I've been here and I've lived the other issues too, so we completely understand it. We are currently assessing it from our last discussions.
right.
Not to get into too much detail, but the cost of a 10-foot fence and the logistics of a fence like that versus a 6 or 8, we're trying to deal with all those. Plus the fact is where to actually place the fence, right? There's a 50-foot PD buffer. There's the whole concern of the road itself and access. Then you have a buffer. We can't block access to the road because it's a joint use roadway between two entities. So all that to be said, we just ask for more time. We'll be prepared to discuss this in further detail when we come back to council.
When you come, before we make a vote, I think we're unified. That's why you're an engineer and we're just council people. And and if you need to take, for all the points you want, you need to take property away, don't take away from the people who live there already. Take it away from the people who haven't built yet, okay? You understand, right? I've had a long conversation about the construction access to 278. I don't care whether it's Stryker Road or it's that other, and I'd like the bigger map which shows the access points, and I want to go over where the lights are. Okay,
The full, this one here?
yeah. Now, regardless of where the construction roads are, 278 is a 2-lane in eastbound and planned to be 3-lane eastbound, 60-mile-an-hour road with 30,000 cars per day. Now, we're going to have logging trucks, cement trucks, and I don't care if it's right out only. And this, for them to come in, out of a 60-mile-an-hour road, and I brought this up before too, and I have pictures on my phone from another development. What these big trucks do, they say, I'm bigger than you, I'm going out there. It's up to you to stop and me to get out. Let's face it, that's what happens. So I have a real concern, and I don't have a solution. That's up to the smart people in the room. But if we need further protection of these big vehicles coming out onto 278 and how they're going to access into 278 safely, and I don't think anyone's put forth a solution to that prior to a light that'll go there somewhere around 10 years from now. And I don't want multiple deaths, multiple car backups, because the logging truck didn't have the patience to wait till the roadway was cleared. You cannot stop people from making stupid mistakes. But we can try to put in preventative measures so it doesn't happen. And we talked about this, Lamar, also. I don't think, Steve brought it up before, and I don't think this has been adequately addressed. And while I'm on the point, show on this bigger map, you talked about where are the planned lights going here?
So this would be the only light on, for this development on 278 would be right here at the Spine Road.
And that is years away. And so this first 1,300 homes, or at least the first phase 1, will be built with all construction traffic, whether it be Stryker, a combination of Stryker and where you show the initial connector road. And that's right across from Brickyard. One of the, that's another one that's already a very dangerous. Anybody ever make a right-hand turn on the Brickyard? From, as you're coming down 278? The whole time I'm putting my brake on, I'm waiting to see the pickup truck in my trunk. It's a very bad intersection because, again, the amount of traffic and the speed. Also, what is never come into this conversation, Jasper County's planning 300 units right across the street from there with an couple access points, one of which would be a road that would come to Brickyard. And I don't think we've adequately looked at the big picture on what the impact of that development is. Now, hopefully that'll die away, because I've been objecting to that for a long time. But we have to, at this point, because it's Jasper County, assume that it's going to come. And Ms. Beals, we need to understand the impact of that 300 development, as well as the construction traffic that's going to come out of that, because that could be starting construction in the next couple of years as well.
Yes, as part of as we mentioned, the traffic studies that have been done for this area have been very collaborative with the larger developments, but they also included, I think, 13 other developments. The one you're speaking of in Jasper County was one of them. That was in the background traffic, along with a non-specific growth rate that is just related to traffic that we didn't have. But there was a very long list that was coordinated with the city's consultant for the corridor study, as well as city staff, and also the other developments that were in process as well in the traffic study, in all the
I
traffic
know you did, but here's what's going to happen potentially and likely in the next 5 years. You're going to start bringing in trucks, logging trucks, cement trucks, and the development across the street going to bring in trucks, and they're going to access through Brickyard. You're going to access through Brickyard. And then within the next 5 years, you're going to have right down the road, right across the street, 72 acres of commercial being built at Margaritaville. All these things are potentially happening at the same time. And in a half-mile stretch. A good point, Steve. So I'm not proposing any solutions. I'm proposing we have to look at what we think's going to happen in the future. And I don't see yet a adequate construction road egress and ingress plan for safety onto a heavily trafficked 60-mile-an-hour road. I'm not asking you to answer it. I'm asking you better come up with an answer before first vote. And I think in various conversations with council, we all have the same concern. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, we will work with staff, and we're
Okay.
already beginning to take a look at options for those. And we don't, I'm not a professor, we don't have an answer for that today.
I understand. That's why I said I don't need an answer. I just need you to know a concern. I know those people have a concern. I know this council has a concern. And we need to have some assurity that we are creating a safe situation from a total vision of what's going to happen in a very small period of time, okay? We also had spoken about eventually down the road to be access to John Smith Road. Would you show that? So the council knows and everybody knows that there's eventually going to, from this phase one development will come over to John Smith Road. All right, could you show that to council, please?
This here.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to be another road that will feed into John Smith Road. You know my feelings on that, but it will take some of the pressure off 278 down the road and put, with that spine road, and then put more pressure on John Smith Road. So again, I'm not proposing anything. I'm looking 10 years down the road and getting concerned. There's also a question I had asked there. Would you please show that is there a plan once that 72 acres of Margaritaville is built up? That was always intended to be open to the public. Would you show the plans to have a access frontage road to that planned commercial district?
Could we go to the concept plan? So I think that's this
But
road
also,
you're talking about up.
you don't want a half mile and going on to 278 and then cutting over to Margaritaville, right? And what we're saying is, and I brought this up before, you don't want this development going out, going to a restaurant in Margaritaville, they come on to traffic in 278, and a half a mile they're slowing down, and there's a big pickup truck bearing down on them, and they want to go into the Margaritaville. So if you have that road going directly to, because it could be supermarkets in there, it could be, and we want to keep people off 278. So could you please show the planned road?
Yeah, so that would be, it's called out as this North Connector Road, so that would also connect to the Spine Road there. So that's this here. And then there's also, which we brought up before, is the South Connector Road to connect to the Spine Road as well.
That's the road coming out of cars. Good, because I was going to ask that question. One of the conversations was, this is not, I'm asking for that this not just be an EMS road, that this be a gated road into the car track. It's like any other gated road, but giving people of Margaritaville an opportunity to come out of their community through a gate onto that road and the eventual spine road. They're going down to 46. So again, this is something we talked about, that this be more than just an EMS road, okay? Also so the council knows, I asked them to reduce the density. I'm on record that if we could put less homes there, like we've done in East Argent, what we did in the car track, that less homes or less cars, less traffic. And I understand the need to have land plans that meet the ability to make a profit, given the cost of land and everything else. I understand that. But I'm on the record that I would like to see less than 6,700 homes in that PDD. And you're still thinking about that, right, Lamar?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay, because if you said no,
As well.
the stick comes out. We all know about the $8 million to the John Smith Road 278 improvements, right? Question is, what is the timetable for that being done, to the timetable of people starting to come out to the Spine Road? What's the timetable of that to be done in conjunction, with what's the timetable of building here?
Well, I believe that agreement requires that engineering, the funds for engineering be sent to the city after 30 days of it being executed. Is that correct, or?
That's for the John Smith Road intersection.
Yeah.
That's for the John Smith Road intersection, but what he's talking about is the timing for the installation of the spine road and the phases that you're going to bring forward and open up for development.
We want, and this came up with South Point. I think it's important that this council and the people know, what's the timetable? When's the spine road going to be done? When's the improvements at 278? When's this big plan going to be feasible in relation to when people are actually going to start moving in here? And I think for first reading, I think the council would like to see what you're at least thinking. There's a timetable. This is going to, DOT is widening I-95. It's going to be here in February, here in March. I think we need a timetable, if you understand what I'm saying, right? I think for the people of Pine Arbor Road have been asking for this, and we did, Mr. Brown did just before you came. I think we need a in-depth understanding and to be able to tell the people of Pine Arbor Road that all these impervious surfaces will not increase the flooding, which we don't have a solution to now. I'm going to go back to Mrs. Guzman's question. How can we, I made a note, I said, good job on prevention versus fix. Yeah, that was excellent. I was very impressed. I think we need to have a Pine Arbor mitigation understanding so that we can look the people on Pine Arbor Road, including Mr. Carroll, look
I mentioned that, Mr. Mayor, too, in this thing about the diameter size and stuff that they had.
So what we need to tell you and all the people who live on Pine Arbor Road in a engineered, intelligent way that this is where the water's going to flow, and it's not going to flow into Pine Arbor Road and in your kitchen. Okay, so I think that needs to be explained. There's two things that I wrote down. We just had this situation with the YMCA. And they had to hold off on the groundbreaking because of the existence of an eagle's nest, and they had to wait until the eggs and the little eaglets flew away. Is there a system in place that will look at that as well? Because I'm sure there's, the eagles all over the place here, and other birds as well. We don't want to be tearing down a tree that there's eggs in it. Is there? Can you explain what's in place to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, and we've done those threatened endangered species studies for that. So
No, I know you've done that. That's not my question. When the bulldozers come in, the logging trucks come in, and you're going to tear down a tree, is there some prior preventative look? Whatever, somebody found those eagles at the YMCA site. Is there, I don't want a tree coming down with whether it be an eagle or whatever, I don't want it coming down. So is there something in place that assures that?
Yeah, well, those environmental studies, so there's been, obviously, the scientists have visited the property, DNR, all those different agencies. So that's identified in those as a part of that study. Specifically, I guess, in terms of while they're building it, as far as I know, none of that was identified on this property. So I'm not aware that any of it is present.
We don't want the eagle to land.
Well,
Right. We don't mind moving it in there after the trees are done. I just don't want a bunch of eggs coming down with the trees, if you follow what I'm saying. And there has to be some sort of, whether it's visual or whatever, assurance that, okay, there's no eggs up there. Because environmental studies, the eagles have eggs all the time.
Yeah, and those type of checks are included in our wetland permits with this. So there are conditions in those permits for those type of events.
And Lamar, he's a bat expert.
Back away. I'm about to get over my skis in a hurry.
Yeah, he's Batman.
But we constantly have checks and balances as we go through this permitting process. We actually submit to DHEC, which has OCRM and CZC, which one of their coastal zone consistency review, and they continually check, which is their job. And they do a great job of it, is checking the state databases for sites that have been boosted, essentially. So I think, to address your question, Mayor, that's really essentially it. And nothing is foolproof, and I know you're not asking that part either, but I think the state level review and just common sense, right? Going out, most people can see an eagle's nest. Again, I'm not going to go record and promise anything, but it's certainly acknowledged.
Right. Just so long as there's precautions in place so something doesn't happen. And just as important to eagle's nest, because I see Miss DeCourcy right behind you there. Did she leave? There are no cemeteries in there. George Washington isn't buried nearby or anything.
The three, again, without going into too much detail and divulging in public, there's a smaller one, but it's not part of a cultural resource. It's being protected. There are 3 sites that are permanently memorialized and identified on the plan.
And explain to the public and to council, when you find those sites, what actually is done to protect those sites.
So what happens is a archaeologist is hired to go. Well, first they perform public record search to be able to narrow it down. Is there something potentially existing on the site? And once they do that, then they go zero in on those spaces. And I don't remember the terms exactly, but they start in a certain interval and do shovel tests, maybe some spoon tests, but shovel tests really just start identifying until once they start identifying where particles of some site really are. And then once they start identifying those, and then they kind of outline the perimeter by tightening up the radius essentially through their testing. Once that's done, then that is supplied. They write up their reports, make recommendations based on date, time, quality of the materials, all those things, whether it should be memorialized or preserved. And they provide that to SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office. They review the information, concur, deny, come to some agreement on that, and then collectively coordinate some type of recommended buffer preservation around those, in fact. Or as an option. That's an option to do that. And that's just one option I'm describing. There's also the other option of further testing to actually excavate the materials and curate them at the University of Georgia or South Carolina, wherever it happens, which most people don't do that. I'm not saying it won't happen, but in this case, we don't plan to do that in this case.
Yeah, and we don't want, start digging and dig up great-grandmom either.
No,
Now, one of the things that I asked at the previous meeting, and I think Lamar was going to swallow his tongue, but I see in Mr. Mearsman's list here that I would prefer that 7 a.m. time be moved to 8 a.m. And I know you were going to talk about that.
I think that's one of those, we need to have further discussions with the team. We've discussed that internally. We'll take.
Again,
advisement again.
Come first reading, these questions are going to come back up, and, if we're going to agree to something, it needs to be in writing, okay? But I would prefer to see, even if it's like certain days, 7 a.m., and again, when you get up to the phase one and you're in that one development's backyard, I get up at 6 o'clock, but I'm unusual. I think I am. A lot of people sleep later than 7 a.m., and, those trucks can be really loud. So I would like you to consider an 8 o'clock start time. You can bring the trucks in maybe at 7, but actually operating at a later time.
Well, and I was here for the car discussion, so I know.
You know,
Coming from,
you
right?
know.
I understand. I think one difference, though, and again, it's being taken into consideration. One thing we need to remember in this case is that spine, right? We're talking about a couple different things, right? We have Stryker Road, which will be used hopefully initially, right, to get in the initial equipment to get on site to begin the horizontal earthwork features like that. Then once they're on site, they're going to stay there and not really come in and out of the workers for the most part, right? So there'll be some other ones. Really, I think the louder stuff we're thinking about is like the concrete trucks that come in once house pours start happening. Some of that will happen probably before we can get our spine road completed, but then once the spine road is completed, we intend to shift those over to that spine road and not be really on Stryker and that close. But at the end of the day, too, the spine road will be a public roadway. It is different than what occurs in Margaritaville. And I know Mr. Mearsman knows this, right? I just want to make sure we put that out there. No matter what we do, we can't control like the time of that road if it's a public roadway. It's 24 hours a day. So it's just, again, I just want to put that out. It's something we all need to understand and come to some agreements on.
Backing right up to.
And it's not going to have a gatehouse, right? And it's going to be open 24 hours a day because it's a benefit. It's a collector road, right? It distributes traffic, but I don't want to leave with a misunderstanding that we can limit times on that.
What we can do, where everybody can live with, in a compromise, is that see all those pods that are right up against homes?
Yes.
We could put something in there that those construction sites do not start till a later time. I don't care about pod C over there because it's a distance, but when you get up to pod 8 and A, B, and O, and you're constructing, 10 feet from somebody's kitchen, I think we could put some language in there that those sites can start later, because you're going to be building homes right up there. And no matter how big the buffer is, those trucks are going to be loud for those homes. So if there's some way we can put language just for certain sites. Brina, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and yes, sir, I do, and I'd have to look at what parts of where those pods fall within the IMP to help kind of structure that.
Yeah, and that's not the first homes being built, so but, if we're gonna approve a master plan and this PDD, the language has to go in now, right? I want to follow up on one of Steve's notes. I think when you come with the initial master plan, you want us to vote on it. We had discussion at our retreat and among the council. We, the city, cannot totally provide parks for everyone. And we can't, 5-year-old kids don't drive to the dog park behind City Hall here. So we want to see exactly where you're going to put some playgrounds, you're going to put in sidewalks, and we applaud that. We're gonna put in a dog park. We're gonna put a little grassy area, a bench for the, because this is a family place. And if you don't put it in a playground, they're not gonna have it. And I know this council, we discussed at our retreat, we want you to put in playgrounds for family developments, okay?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there was quite an amount of time and effort put into, and we can go through it in more detail with council or whenever you'd like to, because it takes some time, but addressing the concerns that the plan has changed, which is part of the reason of bringing this PDD back, of kind of bringing up the current standards and including quite a bit of active open spaces in this plan. So you can be happy with the end result.
I think I'm hitting the end of my list, but one other note that I had made, you know, we talked about having a detailed explanation of stormwater flow into particularly Pine Arbor Road, but also, I think the council would benefit when we get, again, to those Margaritaville homes, exactly with the berming, planning, replacement plan, so what it's gonna look like, and where the fence is gonna go. Because Lamar, I heard him agree to that. Everybody heard him say that, right? Okay. You know, that, yeah, so we need to, you know, make sure that all those things are tied up, and they're tied up in writing as part of this thing. And Brownie, you understand it, because we just went through this with Ms. Ross. Let's make sure we have, you know, mitigation. 50 feet is nothing, as we know. So, I'm going to stop there. I think I got all my notes from our previous meeting, notes that I made today, and Steve, my compliments on this list. I know you got it from the residents. This is really good, and Your Honor, so I'm going to go back to sleep, so turn it back to you.
All right, does council have any further questions?
Yes, Your Honor, as I do.
All righty. You have to bend the knee when you say that.
Don't push it. Your Honors. This is actually for the developer and staff. Your initial proposals are pods A, B, and O. Am I correct?
It's going to be what's included in that initial map. I'm sorry, in the initial master plan that you saw?
Yes.
Yeah, so that actually includes, it's pod A, it's pod B. So it includes whoops, sorry about that. Pod A right here.
Okay.
Pod B here.
Yes.
Pod C.
Yes.
It includes pod D. It includes pod O.
Okay. You don't need to go through all of them.
Yeah, I think
the
that-
reason I'm asking is I'd like to have the number of homes in each one of those pods. Because as you come back to this council, and this will be when this comes for a vote, we will put the number of homes that you will build prior to completion of the spine road. Just like we've done with the other developments, we will give you a number, and we expect that number to be held to. We're not picking on you. This is something that this council has required, and we will continue to require this as we go along. Because in the past, this council and prior to it, we've been burned. We've been burned by developers that says, oh, that spine road's gonna go in, everything's gonna be done, and it's never completed.
Yeah.
We're wiser now.
And we have that number identified as to when those.
In each pod.
Yes, it's associated with our traffic study that's associated with this application.
Okay, but I need the pods that you intend to begin with, that'd be the A, O, B, O, and whatever else you said, the number in each one of those.
Yep, we can certainly provide that.
Okay, that will, because we will definitely want to put that at first reading.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I have one last question. If you can pull that map down just a little bit, because you have something at the very bottom there that kind of sort of gets very close to Millstone Landing.
Millstone Landing right here.
Yeah. I just want to know how close that little section is going to be to Millstone Landing, because there is some fear with those neighbors that the borders are going to be up close and personal with them as well. And I just want to find out what you propose to do to maintain a decent buffer so that they are not looking over their fence at the neighbor across the street.
That came up, I was thinking.
Because to me, it's like, I don't want to have my bedroom looking over the neighbor's house. So I just want to find out what you guys doing to that, about that.
Yeah, so as far as in terms of the actual, I guess, master plan, that area is, it's not included in the initial master plan application. It is obviously included in the PDD.
Okay.
So within the PDD, there is that 50-foot buffer that's required throughout the whole thing. But that area would come back for another master plan, so that would be looked at in the future.
Okay.
For significant details.
Okay.
That's a good point, though.
No more questions from council? Okay, so I'm going to open it
Madam
up.
Chair, before you open it up to public comment, there's one thing I want to get out there to get some clarification on. Drew, if you could scroll to the top there, it's regarding the signalized access on 278, and wanted to ask either staff or maybe Ms. Beal, but my understanding is the commercial portion of this property over here had its own traffic impact analysis that was performed at some point in time. And I believe the thought was that there would be some kind of signalized intersection access on 278 coming from this portion. And well, the commercial portion associated with Margaritaville up here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna look at Lamar on that one.
Okay,
'cause
well, and where I'm going is, if that is the case, is there any concern with regards to the distancing between those two? Since we're looking at approving an infrastructure plan, that becomes a critical question about the downstream effects that it could have for other developments.
And there's certainly, because of the age of that traffic study that was done for that, the Anderson track, and at that point, the 72-acre commercial was not really called out. There was a signal planned for, I think, that crossover.
Yeah, there were 4 animals.
No, you're the expert.
I can still remember some of this stuff, but yes, when we did the Anderson track, to your question, right, there was an access management plan just for that specific track. Now, it took into account Morgan and West Argent across the street, because that was current at the time. But it was planned at that time. There's primary access at Latitude Boulevard, which is signalized now, everybody knows, but there is, or was a plan for a signal to occur essentially midways of the Sutton, we keep calling it Sutton, the 72 acres of commercial. But that's still, I mean, still has to come back through, like any signal on any roadway has to have a signal warrant.
Sure.
to be performed. So I don't know, I mean, we kind of looked at some of that stuff, but don't know the timing of really that track related to spacing, but I think
Okay.
spacing generally works.
Well, my concern would be is if this was approved for the signalized intersection here, if that would ultimately preclude any additional signalized access there because of the spacing issues, would it not make more sense then to look at shifting this signalized access further down away from the John Smith Road intersection and having one signalized access that could serve both properties?
So I think we need to we'll take a closer look at that and understand your concern. There's so many, it's a great point. There's Beaufort County involved, if you think about it, like looking at access spacing on 78. So nothing's finalized on that. I would just say, like others, we'll take that under advisement and come back. We understand you raised your concern.
But Josh, with the spacing, I mean, you could throw a softball between that entrance and the Margaritaville light. The solution is to keep people off 278. Ms. Beals, you agree? So what we need is that frontage road from this development to the Margaritaville thing. And then Margaritaville has their own access points that was part of the plan. And so if the flow if they come into that, let's say it's all built up, that 72 acres, but then rather than access out onto 278, they would be able to access to Latitude Boulevard and come out that way.
Latitude Boulevard is a private road. That-
Right, but that's well before, but I think that was one of the concepts, is to, rather than have people keep going on to 278, have these frontage accesses.
It's before the gate.
It's before the gate.
Comes out before
It is before the gate. It's, I can't speak for everybody, but with it being a private road, that could be problematic for turning that into a public road, is basically what it would be. I like the idea better of moving that spine road over closer to the east and put a signal there. The ideal thing is keep signals a half mile apart. It's not always possible, but it would make more sense. The Morgan Tract is kind of like the fly in the soup for everybody right now. There it sits. We don't know what's going to happen with it or when it's going to happen, but there's a development on the east side. Now we're going to have a development on the west side. Access is always going to be the issue for both developments.
I don't know, it's tough to balance the best interest of all parties, right, which is a challenge always. All I can say is let us look at it a little closer. I don't know that we'll have a final answer when we come back, but I think it's something that's going to continue to be studied, because we certainly don't want to go on record and try to lock that down right. Yes, we'll have an access point, so there needs to be some finality to it. Another thing too is we got to take into consideration, I know everyone of you guys know this, is we got the environmental concern. That's one issue when you have Stryker Road, there's a bunch of wetlands lined up on that side.
Well,
You got to have a justification for having that also. And safety in traffic is a serious concern. I'm not saying it wouldn't pass muster, but it's just, we need to think through all of this.
just saying that if the idea is to make that one portion of Latitude Boulevard into a public road, you're going to make my life a nightmare. And I don't need a nightmare.
And I don't want to get into splintering this conversation for that. I realize that's out there, but I don't think it, I hear you. We keep this compartmentalized
thank
to
you.
72 acres.
Thank you.
That's okay.
All right, so we're going to open the floor to the public, and what I ask is, for those of you who have questions, when you come up to the podium, please state your name and your address. And if someone has already asked the same question, ask a different question so that we manage time. So who wants to go first?
Jim, go.
Hi, my name is Jim Dreiling. I'm a resident of Phase 4 in Margaritaville. First off, and my house is right there. You can see it on that map. So, first off, I want to thank the council for letting me speak for a second. Also, I'm very impressed with what I've heard so far. Some of the questions and the concerns that you've already raised were ones that I had, and I'm very impressed with where you're going with this. I really don't have a question as much as I have a comment that I wanted to share. An experience that I have that hopefully you can take into consideration as you're looking at this. I've moved to Margaritaville about a year and a half ago. Prior to that, I was living in the Coosaw Creek subdivision in North Charleston. It's a golf course community with about 600 homes. I was the Treasury Secretary of the HOA there for a number of years. And we experienced a similar situation. We had a new development that came up that was built shortly after I moved there. I lived there for 9 years. Shortly after I was there, it was probably about the size of this initial development of 1,300 or so homes that they built. There were wetlands and woodlands between the two subdivisions, but clearly what we started experiencing as the houses were being built was that we had several youths incursions into our neighborhood. A number of cars were broken into. And on the council, I was hearing that all the time, the different things that were going on. One night we had as many as 12 cars that were broken into. It was pretty common, got to be a common experience. We had very good cooperation with the North Charleston Police Department and the Dorchester County Police, but there's only so much they could do at 2 and 3 in the morning to be able to police the area. Obviously we didn't have adequate protection to keep people from coming in and out of the neighborhood. My big concern is that protection. I know it was raised, and the mayor brought a lot of great points up about a fence, about a berm, And some of those things really need to be addressed to help us, because I don't want the same problem. The problem we saw not only with the youths, as some of the neighbors began to confront some of these people, that they would actually start watching on their cams at night and whatever. We had a couple of hostile interactions, and we saw a number of neighbors beginning to arm themselves, and where it was going was not. It was kind of getting ugly. That's one of the reasons I moved down here. So I don't want to repeat that situation. But appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much for where you're going with this. I appreciate your opportunity to let me talk.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm John Thompson, 93 Parrot, which is one of the closer ones to the new development. As I was thinking about it, we probably do have a 50-foot distance to Stryker Road, but we don't have a berm, and it is visible. The idea of a fence is great, but a partial fence is not going to work. It's going to be all there, down the whole thing, because kids are going to find a way. They're going to say, oh, well, we'll just follow it down, and we can get around here. Margaritaville has attractive nuisances. We have unfenced ponds. We have 2 swimming pools that are not that hard to get into if you really want to. And our fear is that kids are going to come across Stryker Road, if they don't get hit to begin with, and get harmed. Now, as a 55 community, we're pretty good about not doing that. But we've all been kids, and we know we'll just go over and look at that. No. If there's a fence, I want it the entire length of Stryker Road. Put gates in, whatever you have to do, but at least make them think about what they're doing first. Just as a thought, there was the concern about the right in, right out. I was thinking just put longer access lanes on it. So that the trucks actually have a chance to get off the road and slow down and be out of the traffic and coming back in. I appreciate all your effort and concern on this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Particularly him.
I didn't do it, you can't do it, I wasn't.
Well, let's roll back the tape.
Hello, David Baker, Margaritaville, but most of my comments aren't related necessarily to the berm. I'm very aware of that, lived there for quite a while. Just more or less some of the comments that I have. Has there been any studies done related to, because I presume this is a family development, about the impact to the school district, about what the additional families and additional children would have in here? Just something to think about. I know it isn't necessarily the city council's purview to worry about that, but I just think that that's something that has to be considered in the when they're building this. The other thing that I had was that I'm aware of that there is some large utility right-of-ways that currently exist in this property, both kind of over by the John Smith Road as well as along 46. Is there any plans about what you will do with that, or is you going to leave it alone? Is there anything you want to do with that property?
Are you, sorry, Mr.
Mr. Baker, yeah.
Mr. Baker. You're referring to the overhead power lines?
Right.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
high voltage
Yeah,
lines.
we don't control those. Dominion Energy
Right.
control, Dominion Energy and Central Electric. For their
Yeah, I
subsidiary.
couldn't think of their name.
Anyway, there's 2 entities that own the Santee Cooper.
Sandy Cooper.
Yeah, Dominion's actually in the process, and I haven't been down there in quite a few months, but they came to us. We wanted additional acreage for a substation site on Highway 46,
Right.
as well as letting us know they were going to be rebuilding that whole transmission line. All the
Okay.
way, some distance headed into Bluffton. They're rebuilding all the transmission lines in the area.
Okay.
Just that area on the west side of the city also.
And Lamar, would it be an accurate statement to say, generally speaking, they may allow for crossings or roads, but they don't
That's
allow
right.
for any structures
That's right, yeah.
to be built within their easement areas?
Horizontal improvement, but not really any vertical, aside from some basic landscape.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Yes, thank you.
The other thing that I would like to just make a suggestion to the developers is on the Spine Road, you set a 10-foot multi-use pathway along the entire length. That was good. I would like to see 12 if we could get it. You know, that's for something you to negotiate with the city council on. I would like to see 12 foot. Also, I would, as a recommendation, I would say as much as possible, if you can keep it to one side or the other side of the road and minimize the number of crossovers that people may have to make. There are some places where I've been where they continually flop it one side, then the other, and back and forth, and then have multiple crossings of pedestrians and bicyclists of that Spine Road. So if you could minimize those crossings, that would be good. And lastly, I'm aware that there's going to be a light at John Smith. I think that we've already gone over the spacing of the traffic lights, and I think that more thought has to be put into that to minimize the number of traffic lights that we're going to have on 278. My experience with the SCDOTs and other DOTs, you're not going to get the speed limit lowered to 55 there, so it's going to be a problem if you have too many lights along there. It's just going to cause a traffic issue. But that's all I have for comments.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, thank you. I'm Lisa Thompson, 93 Parrott Avenue. Most of my questions were addressed by the council. Thank you. Ms. Guzman, I do have a follow-up to the wastewater or storm water. I was really impressed during the big storms that we had earlier or last year, how in Margaritaville things slope right into the property there. So we had no water incursion into our lawn, which is great. And we're considered flood zone X. So I just want to make sure that as this goes forward, and I know in talking to Mr. Mersman, we had talked about that we're not supposed to have any incursion over. So I just want to make sure as the 100-year plan or whatever is done, that will continue. I really don't want to have to get flood insurance, and of course, or flooded first. Yeah, and then get flood insurance. So thank you for looking into that. The other question I have, are these going to be 1 or 2-story homes?
It'll be a variation. I don't.
Variation.
Yes.
So behind, okay.
There's not a specific outline right now of the specific floor plans.
Okay, because part of that is related to noise and light. So as you know, where we are, there's no berm behind us, and Stryker Road, the trucks go through all the time right now for Minto, and we've been talking to Minto about that, complaining to Minto, frankly. But so we can see it. So what we're concerned about is as this development goes in, will there be headlights coming in? Will there be light coming in from the top of the 2-story homes? I like the idea of the 10-foot fence. Will that take care of any people from the top of the 2-story home looking down into our properties? Those are things that, we are concerned about. And I have some friends that live just down the road. They're single. They're in their 50s and 60s. Very, very scared about this going in because they are single and they're really concerned about their security. So the fence, like if you can do the whole thing, whatever we can do to not get in the situation that Jim was just talking about that he had in his development. And story homes, light noise. And one other thing with Stryker Road, 8 a.m. would be great to start the construction, but what we are finding as Mentos doing their construction, they have trucks go in earlier to quote stage. They're not really constructing, but I'm retired and I hate being woken up at around 6 o'clock every morning with the trucks coming down Stryker Road right now. And I am, as I said, I am complaining to Minto Construction. Any way to minimize that, I think putting them into, instead of first gear, putting them higher gear, I think could help. Keeping the road smooth. There are a lot of potholes back there. And then anything to minimize dust. because you can see the clouds of dust often, depending on the year, as the trucks go down. Watering down the loads, I think you're going to be moving dirt around probably, right? As well as logs. So anything you can do to minimize that so we don't have dust coming into our lanais and over the top of our houses would be appreciated. Thank you for considering all of this.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
If you will bear with me, I'm going to show you my computer screen. We'll gladly show it to the developers first.
If you can give me your name and your
Oh.
address, sorry.
I forgot.
That's okay.
Ainsley Fagan, 546 Sawmill Road in the Millstone Landing Development.
Thank you.
I can either put my computer up there or I can try and turn it here, but I would gladly show it to y'all. If the council can see this photo, this is a photo of my backyard that is flooded in a very minor rainstorm, and my property directly abuts to the Morgan Tract. There is no buffer. There is not a striker road between my property and the Morgan Tract. There is a direct back point to my home and the Morgan Tract. So my first question is, as you can also see in this picture, is will the developers be using these dirt roads that are behind Millstone Landing for construction? And my second question is, where is the access point on 46 to get into the property on the Morgan Tract in order to build and develop the homes that y'all have planned for the Morgan Tract? I know that the area down by Millstone Landing is not in the first phase of development, but as the entire PDD is up for discussion today, I think it is very important that Millstone Landing, which is an area that has 54 homes right now and has a plan for at least 160 homes, be taken into consideration as the Morgan Tract continues to develop. I would also ask that the developers update their PDD to include the homes that are in Millstone Landing, so that when it comes before the council can see how many homes there are and that are planned to be there. Yes, like they're doing for Margaritaville, which you can see there. However, our wonderful little neighborhood, although we may be 54 homes, we are small but mighty, and we care about the development of this land. As you can see, and I can go and point on that map directly where my home is, but it is all yellow directly behind my home. And as you can see in this picture, there is a dirt road directly behind my home. There is no buffer. It will be immediately behind my home. I would ask that at bare minimum, there is a 100-foot buffer placed behind our home, and that the developers certify and stay in front of this council that at bare minimum, if there is not a fence, they will plant and heavily forest this buffer. Additionally, there are massive wetlands in this area. I do not believe that this map accurately reflects the current FEMA floodplain, which I have printed and looked and pinpointed my address on. I am in AE, according to this map that I printed on January 31st. And this map shows also where my property is in line with the Morgan Tract. I do believe there needs to be consideration for the Pine Arbor area. We have consistently flooded even in small rain. This is an issue with our community as we are still in development. I foresee it to continue to be a problem as development goes through in this area. And I would highly ask that this council continue to ask the questions that they have so graciously asked about the flooding. Last but not least, I do think that there needs to be taken into consideration traffic on 46 as well. We've talked a lot about 278. And again, I know this is far down the road, but there is the Millstone Landing development, and there's going to be up to 6,700 homes here. Millstone Landing only has one exit out of the development, and we had a meeting with our HOA this past week, and they have told us there will be no other exit. meaning that any left turn out of Millstone Landing onto 46 will become increasingly dangerous with the traffic that has continued to develop in this area. Additionally, there are multiple other developments that are coming up on 46. We need to consider all of these developments in globo and not just one at a time. Hardeeville is vastly growing, and I am not one to pause development in any sort of way. But coming from a town in Louisiana that has gone through this same boom at one point, I can see the writing on the wall. And we are going to run into these same issues where it's going to take 50 minutes to go from one side of Hardeeville to another. And we've already seen that in Bluffton, and we see it in Hilton Head, we see it in Pooler, and we see it in all these areas that have very similar developments. So I just ask that we keep continuing to monitor these things, and as the developments go on in the different pods throughout the Morgan Tract, we continue to ask these same questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I, Your Honor?
I will gladly point out where I am on this map. Here is my property. There is a planned road probably right behind us, and there's maybe a 50-foot buffer, and we have no wetland buffer between us.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I?
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
This is exactly why we have workshops and invite the public. Ma'am, that was outstanding. Outstanding. And I don't think any of us up here, we're so concentrated on the east side, and that's a later phase, that we have not taken a look at Millstone. And I would say, Mr. Gruber, that I think this council should give as much attention to Millstone Landing. And you say 54 homes? We approved 630 homes in Millstone Landing. So all that entire white part has nothing but yellow next to it. And we have not even taken it into consideration. But thanks to you, we are. That was outstanding. Thank you so much.
My name is Robert Helm. I'm at 895 Parrot. I have one question and one comment. My house is going to be right there on the Pod B. My question is, are you going to just clear all those trees up to Stryker Road? Or are you going to leave a buffer between Stryker Road and Pod B as some trees? Or all the trees are going to be gone up to the road? That's a question.
Wasn't it?
I believe this is part of the buffer that we have discussed, the 50-foot buffer, and it's been discussed. We don't want little scraggly trees. We want dense vegetation to be planted, and the possibility of where Pod B intersects along Stryker Road there, fencing. I'm not going to back off on fencing along that.
Yeah, but my question is, from Stryker Road, is there going to be 50 foot of trees left
On the Morgan side?
on Pod, the yellow part?
Yeah, on Pod, yes.
Yeah, okay, so
the
there will
50
be
Yeah, the
50
50-foot
feet
buffer is required.
of trees.
Of
They're not gonna
trees, yes.
level it out.
Yeah,
and
well,
just have plant grass 50.
Whatever's there, Steve.
Let's clarify this here. So the existing natural buffer, what is there in place now, would be required to be left.
Okay.
The 50-foot buffer, and then our code requires certain planting standards that are also required to be incorporated. So to say exactly what type is there, it really depends on what's there in place now, but whatever's there in place, 50 feet of it remains.
As long as they weren't going to clear cut right up to the road, because I have a berm now with some trees, and there's some trees behind there,
Yeah.
which I'd like to, if they would stay. My other comment, and I know it's probably back to the drawing board for everybody, but can the Spine Road be moved to the center of the property? And I know that brings a whole lot of problems for everybody, but that would give everybody in Margaritaville a little bit more room. It wouldn't be, it'd be a little bit, it'd be something to consider if the Spine Road could be moved to the center of the property. Thank you.
Geography of the
That wouldn't work.
locates it. I believe that Spine Road is the original from 2006.
Essentially,
Yeah.
it is locked in, and just following the green patches, follow the yellow down through it, it avoids, it minimizes wetland impacts.
And sir, just so you understand, kind of, they're required to go through a review process at the state level with regards to the wetland impacts. And basically, the assumption is if you can accomplish your goal by impacting less wetlands, that's what you're going to be pushed to do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any further questions from council? Anything, Katie, from social media? No? Okay. Oh. Okay, sir.
This is not related, but it is. I know the Hoyer Group and D.R. Horton is not presenting, but we have been discussing for 2 years an affordable housing plan. And I just want to remind everybody involved with that we bring this forward, and Josh, you weren't part of it, but we've had conversations about taking a group of houses, finding things and doing a Harvey Place kind of thing throughout the city. And and we talked about it with Stefan a couple months ago. Let's not forget about that. That is too important to the city. We have a landowner, a builder, who are interested in the same end. Let's get it back on the table. Let's get it complete. Let's get attorney reviews and everything that has to be done. And let's get an agreement between the city and the Hoyer Investment Group. I don't want everybody to forget about that.
Any further questions?
So next steps, so there's going to be a city council meeting for the first read after they made modifications. Do we know when that's going to be?
I believe, Mr. Gruber, do you have any?
February 20th, this will come before the council for first reading. As of right now, if there's changes made by the developer requests it, it may be delayed, but the first reading will be at that date. And just so the public knows, the public will have a chance to address council and the developer at that time and at the second reading 2 weeks after that. So there's plenty of time for public input.
And that's at 5 o'clock usually?
Yes.
Thank you.
The mayor has reminded me that if the questions posed, some here today and by council at first reading, we have the ability to table this. And we have tabled other developments in the past until we get the answers. Mr. White has said something that really rings true. Let's not be in a hurry to make a mistake. And I think this is where this council has taken it upon themselves to get all those answers before we take that.
Okay. I think third time's going to be a charm. Any further questions? All right. There being none, I call for a motion to adjourn the meeting. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, and the meeting is adjourned.